Welcome to the Know. I'm Ashley Jenkins.
I'm Turney.
The Let's Play community is in the middle of a little bit of a dust-up with the developers of That Dragon Cancer, who've sort of blamed Let's Plays for poor sales of the game.
Before we get too far into this, we want to acknowledge that That Dragon Cancer is a game about a young boy who dies of cancer, which is based on the developer's actual son. So any humor that we engage in this story isn't about the game's subject matter or its real-life equivalent. That's very serious.
Cancer's not funny.
Not funny.
As for the latest spat between Let's Players and developers, this one started with, what else? A blog post.
Over at the game's official blog, developer Ryan Green wrote a post addressing criticism about content IDing the game's music, which pulled revenue from flagged videos that used the game's soundtrack on YouTube. So yeah, Let's Players weren't too happy with someone else making money on their work.
While Green agreed that, yes, it does suck to have someone else making revenue off your work. He meant it from kind of the opposite direction. He specifically addressed the issue of Let's Plays for games like That Dragon Cancer, arguing that they actively hurt the game's sales.
Green writes that the studio has not yet seen a single dollar from sales. He goes on to say that they underestimated how many people would be satisfied with only watching the game instead of playing it themselves.
Even though Green feels that Let's Plays add value to the medium of video games, he also says that for a short, relatively linear experience like ours, for millions of viewers, Let's Play recordings of our content satisfy their interest, and they never go on to interact with the game in the personal way that we intended for it to be experienced.
Citing the game's not-so-fantastic Steam sales, according to Steam Spy, it has less than 13,000 owners, compared to the millions of views on Let's Plays. Green says this ultimately hurts smaller linear experiences like his, That Dragon Cancer. He also says that they did in fact decide to remove the content ID from the game's music.
In the end, he says that since they've allowed Let's Players to make money from the game, creators should return that favor by creating Let's Play videos that don't just rebroadcast the entirety of our content with minimal commentary, but instead use portions of our content as a context to share your own stories and start conversations with your viewers.
This has, again, started more conversations about the roles of Let's Plays in the larger video game industry, something we've had a lot of lately.
Yeah, lots of. But looking at the post, this isn't just a case of an angry developer going nuts on someone for hating their game. Digital homicide. Or even someone upset that Let's Play format exists in general, like Nintendo.
It's clear that Green is being very even with his words here in order to avoid that dragon internet rage. He also actually brings up a few points that are worth considering, especially in dealing with small, niche games like his.
Yes, from the post, Green specifically has a problem with Let's Plays that are devoid of commentary or any promotion of the game itself.
However, some are arguing that the game's intense subject matter prompted Let's Players to try and handle the game as sensitively as possible, minus all the screaming that they tend to do.
And once the screaming's gone, what's left? It's hard to blame a developer who's put tons of hours of work into a project for wanting to make a profit, and it probably stings to see others benefit from the game you made when you haven't profited yet, especially for a work as intensely personal as this one.
We've covered fair use before, actually a lot on this channel, but Let's Plays are kind of on a moral gray area here when it comes to whether or not they constitute transformative content. But one that has zero commentary on it altogether really is just a form of copyright theft straight out.
And many gamers aren't really aware just how unique something like Let's Plays are to the medium. I mean, if you uploaded the entirety of Batman vs. Superman with an audio commentary track, you'd get hit by Warner Brothers Justice League lawyers faster than a speeding bullet.
Yes.
It would take negative time for that to happen.
Absolutely, but is this something that's really the fault of Let's Plays? I mean, on the one hand, it seems like Green's got a compelling argument here about short, linear experiences. A Let's Play does kind of lay all the cards out on the table in a way that isn't the case for a shooter or something with more meat on its bones. More places where the gameplay experience is unique, even in small ways.
Now, others might argue that if you really want people to play your game, well, then you should make an actual game, not a narrative couched in a game engine.
Let's just call the issue what it is. That Dragon walking simulators.
For some reason, the walking simulator genre has exploded in popularity in recent years. Dear Esther, Gone Home, Stanley Parable, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, Firewatch, I mean, these are all games that have gotten equal amounts of critical praise and criticism for offering unique narrative experiences, but also, there's not a lot of gameplay there.
Yeah, to be fair, now That Dragon Cancer does have some small bits of gameplay threaded throughout it, but it does lean a bit more closely to a game that's experienced rather than played.
Which sort of lends credence to Green's argument that if you can watch a walking simulator, you don't necessarily need to play it, and that puts developers and Let's Players in a tricky spot. For games like the ones we just listed, or even, to a lesser extent, things like Telltale Games or Dontnod's Life is Strange, playing is so close to watching that the viewer can get most of the game's value from a Let's Let's Play, or at least they feel like they do, even if they're blind to all those other branching stories they could have gone down on their own.
Yeah, but judging from how well those games have sold, I mean, that's not 100% the case. Each of these games we just listed also have tons of Let's Play coverage that didn't really affect their sales. Stanley Parable, for instance, has sold close to 2 million copies. Gone Home was a runaway hit walking sim, and it's sitting at 650,000. Dear Esther is almost at 800. They've sold a lot.
They do well, and so one of the most recent examples is Firewatch, a game that can be watched/played in just one sitting, and it received a ton of Let's Play coverage as a result. Developer Campo Santo just last week published some stats showing that this didn't faze gamers. It's moved over 500,000 copies and even made its money back in the first day.
There are a number of factors that turn small games into really huge successes, and yes, Let's Plays can be very influential for that. Generally, we see positive Let's Play coverage tends to create a spike in sales, and negative coverage can hurt games. But that's not really what happened here with That Dragon Cancer.
No, it actually received a ton of positive press before the game came out. Razer was donating profits from the game, Reply All did an entire podcast about them, it got amazing reviews and a ton of write-ups about being a capital, important moment in history of video games.
But one of those big factors that determines whether or not your game is a success is people actually wanting to play it.
As a small title with mature subject matter, unfortunately, That Dragon Cancer was always going to have kind of a niche audience. Yes, a lot of people were interested in it, but interest doesn't always translate into investment.
You can't fall into the trap of trying to turn millions of views or downloads into potential lost sales. It's not really a one-to-one deal, ever. This has long been the case of any form of piracy, whether it's someone uploading all of your content to YouTube or someone putting up a cracked version of your game on torrent sites.
At the end of the day, as sad as it is for big weighty games like this, it's still a business and you are selling a product. If it's not a product people want, then it's going to lead to poor sales.
And Green kind of says this himself when he says that they underestimated the amount of people who'd be content merely watching it.
Now, hopefully things do turn around for Numinous Games and other studios who want to tackle similarly heavy subject matter. Don't use this as a case study against tackling bigger issues. It's really important.
We've certainly seen games tackle big issues before. They just tend to obfuscate it a little. Shadow of the Colossus is all about death and loss, for instance, and Papo and Yo is about an abusive father. I mean, these games are games first, though.
Not that that's what they have to be, but developers should expect that when you're making something for a niche audience, you might only get niche sales and budget as such, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, if you're a Let's Player, make sure your content is in fact transformative and that you do what you can to point your audience to the original work. Let's Plays generally slide by fair use because they're considered performance, and if you're not delivering that to your audience, then maybe you shouldn't cover this kind of game or find a better way to cover it in line with what Green suggested in his blog post.
What do you guys think of the creators of That Dragon Cancer standing off against Let's Plays? Do you think Let's Plays are fair? Do you think they need to be a little bit more careful? Let us know in the comments.
For more on the latest spats between developers and players, like this video and subscribe to the Now. Well, you have a ton of B-roll there for the end. Me, I'm not smart. Look at me, I'm a dumb bitch. No, I tend to screw it up. Well, I don't know that word.
Obfuscate.
Obfuscate. We've certainly seen games tackle big issues before. They just tend to obfuscate. I can't say it.
Obfuscate.
Can I use a different word, please?
Yeah.
Obfuscate. I can do it. Obfuscate. I feel like I'm in a spelling bee. We've certainly seen games tackle big issues before. They just tend to obfuscate. I'm not smart enough for this channel. They just tend to obfuscate. No, it's too hard for me. Obfuscate.